Charged 51 over here. I hope you're having a split time again. We're half a British Grand Prix and then obviously the Dutch Grand Prix. By the way, Boosted's back.
Hi guys.
It's good to see you, Boosted. Are you ready for a long amount? I'm sorry that I said British Grand Prix. I meant the Belgian Grand Prix because obviously we didn't have a race. Like I said, half a weekend. We're just going to talk about 3 quick talking points and then we're going to jump straight into the Dutch Grand Prix where Max Verstappen basically dominated. But let's jump into the Belgium talking points real quick. Guys, I'm not going to run through the results or anything. If you want to go check it out on the F1 YouTube channel. It was the main highlight of the weekend was qualifying. Let's be deadly honest.
And the pit stops that the marshals did.
Very. That was the silliest mini. Quickest pit stop in Belgium, marshals. Oh my word. In any case, okay. So, Boosted, the first thing I want to talk about is the insane weather conditions we had at Belgium. I mean, I think practice 1 on the Friday morning was a wet practice for most of the session. And then come Saturday, we had an extremely wet qualifying. By the way, Williams was on point on the Saturday, going very risky. And then Sunday, the weather was so bad that they literally, we waited for 4 hours?
For nothing.
Yeah, for the stewards to finally say, okay, the race is deemed undrivable. Even though I think the most racing action we had was at the beginning of the race, 2 laps behind the safety car, and then about 2.5 hours later, another 2 hours behind the safety car.
Yes, when Mazepin puts up the fastest lap.
Yes, Mazepin, I think
for over 3 minutes.
Well, thinking about the conditions we had, that might have been the only way we could have gotten the fastest lap. But still, congratulations, Nikita Mazepin, on your first ever fastest lap in Formula 1. Oh, wait. Okay, so Boosted, do you have anything to say about the weather conditions?
It was just really crazy, and I'll lead it with the crazy weather. I'll lead it into the track sweepers. That when we saw the track sweepers, I realized they were dumb, because when I thought about it, they should have, when the cars after the first 2 laps, formation laps. Yeah. They should have just when everyone knew the car they're gonna wait for better weather.
Yeah.
Weather. Why didn't they send out the track sweepers then immediately?
Actually, that's the same question I asked, and I know. Look, especially the area where Spa-Francorchamps is in Belgium, it's a very rainy part of the world. There's a lot of rain there right throughout the year. One thing that bothered me about basically the insane weather, we basically had monsoon rain conditions. It was really tough to see. But when you talk about the track sweepers, one thing I want to add on to is, look, do you know the amount of water that a single F1 wet weather tire can throw away from the car at a stage? Each tire is 60 liters of water per second that it can dissipate away from the car. You've got 4 tires, so that's 240 liters. Now, I know if you look at that and you're like, it's spray and everything, it's a hard way to classify, but that's basically Pirelli's stats. Pirelli says the wet weather F1 tire can dissipate 60 liters of water per second per tire. So obviously the reason we couldn't go racing is because there wasn't really a dry line forming, even with the formation lap, with even the help of the safety car. But like you said, they were done. They didn't send out the track sweepers after the first round of laps. Belgium has got a few track sweepers at Spa. If what my dad actually said that I thought was really a bright idea, and I mean we waited 4 hours, but they had more than enough time to circle the track about 2 or 3 times. Put the track sweepers in one line next to each other and let them go around the track. Sweep the track 2 or 3 laps, see if they actually clear enough water, and then decide whether we're going to race or not. But I mean, I think we saw 2 track sweepers, one going into Eau Rouge, and the other one somewhere in the final sector, and they only cleaned up like a small piece of the track. They didn't really make effort to clear the whole track. So I was just confused that everybody, especially my heart goes out to the Belgian fans that bought tickets, waited for 4 hours in soaking conditions just to go home without any racing action.
Yeah, and the problem with the race, it was not like the rain was too heavy. It was just more like they couldn't see anything because of the standing water.
Due to the spray.
And if I just sweep that standing waters away, that would have been a race.
Exactly my point as well. Sorry guys, we are actually busy eating as well. It's been a long day, so excuse if you hear a bit of crunching in the background. No, it's not professional. Just be with it.
It's delicious.
Yes, it's basically a pizza. Not the point. So the main thing for me was, look, I can understand if you're sitting in anything from P3 to down. That amount of spray is blinding. But if the track sweepers sweep the track, say, for 3 laps, there's still obviously a lot of water. Send the cars out behind the safety car. Let them tell the drivers, try and stay in formation. Obviously, I get the tires need to be heated. But for 2 laps, say, even if we got 5 laps under safety car before they started racing, for 2-3 laps, keep them all in one line to clear a racing line. Then for the final 2 laps, get them to warm up the tires, and let's go green and see what happens. But the one thing that I also need to add on, the reason I think the stewards didn't let us go racing, first of all, and I know I bring this up a lot, but it's a fact, is due to Antoine Hubert's crash back in 2019, and also Norris's massive shunt in Saturday qualifying. Norris had a big moment going up through Eau Rouge, and I think due to that reason and the spray being that bad, I don't think the FIA or even the teams wanted to risk their drivers, to be deadly honest, because I know the final decision was heavily influenced by all the team principals.
Yeah, I think everyone was scared, and it's understandable because the speeds they are going, that's with one wrong move or wrong something, there's a big accident waiting, and could be closer to death than it would normally be. Because imagine if they crash, and because of the heavy spray, the cars behind are not gonna see them.
Exactly. And I mean, if you look back at Antoine Hubert's crash, the reason Antoine died was because he had a first impact into the barrier. The car ricocheted across the track and got T-boned by Jean-Manuel Correa, and it was at close to 300 kilometers an hour. Antoine Hubert's car shattered into pieces. And these cars are not built to take 2-3 big impact, and he had the impact into the wall, and on the side where he had the 5 kilometers an hour, it's something insane like that. And like you said, with the intense amount of spray, you won't necessarily see somebody going off track and having a crash and coming back onto the track, or whatever the situation may be. So I can understand why the race was not held, why the race didn't start. But leading into my third talking point, I don't feel there should have been points awarded for that race. Yes, it was half points, but nobody earned points. And yes, you can argue, but they did the qualifying. They did so well in qualifying, but nobody has ever really looked at something in the record books and gone, "Oh, George Russell got his first podium." They didn't race. Wait, what? He got it thanks to qualifying. I mean, I can understand why they gave half points, but the race never really started. And I know there's that rule in F1 where they say as soon as a certain amount of laps is complete, half points is awarded, and then after another certain amount, I think it's over 70% of the prescribed distance, then they get full points. So anything after 2 laps to 69% is half points, and anything over 70% you get your full amount of 100% points. But still, I mean, with all honesty, I would have loved to see, for instance, I mean, we saw how quick the Williams cars were in the wet and qualifying, and yes, they gamble on the intermediate strategy, but still, even on the wet, they were quick.
Yeah.
And I would have loved to see, when it rains like that, all the cars are basically equalized. You're looking at like an F2 series. In those conditions, it's about how good the driver is. And I would have loved to see Verstappen v Russell battle through the first sector of the track, and all these other drivers trying to make moves. Having the experienced guys like Alonso, Vettel, Raikkonen, Hamilton, all these guys trying to get through the field. I think it would have been an extremely entertaining race. But I just feel there shouldn't have been points awarded for basically 4 laps of running.
Yeah, I think for us, we would say no points needed to be awarded, but I think with the constructors championship in everything, mostly constructors championship for the teams. I think all the teams want it, especially like Williams and let's say
Ferrari and McLaren and with their battle.
Red Bull with Max
On pole, yes.
They wanted, they pushed for that points because they knew they need to get every single point they can, even if it doesn't make the fans happy, because 1 point now will make a difference between winning and losing.
That I obviously understand.
And for like Williams,
it was half points, so
that
P8 and P9.
P8, P9 now they more solidly ahead.
Yeah, I mean,
P8.
if Alfa Romeo was sitting on 3 points in the Constructors' Championship, I think Williams are now sitting on 20 points. Let me actually quickly have a look here. Okay, Constructors' Championship status. This is now after the Dutch Grand Prix, where neither Alfa Romeo or Williams got points, so it's the same as Belgium. Alfa Romeo is sitting on 3 points, and Williams are sitting on 20 points. But if you take away the 9 points that Russell got, they would have been sitting on 11. And obviously, I do realize that at the end of the year, the teams don't just get paid for their Constructors' Championship position, but also for the amount of points that they do gain in the Constructors. That's why teams like Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari in previous years had such massive budgets, because it's not just for your championship position, it's for the amount of points you achieve during the previous season. So I get why the teams pushed for the points, but also for all the drivers in P11 to P20, that is highly unfair, because looking at the conditions, if stuff really went to crap, you could have seen someone like Mick Schumacher win that race.
Yeah.
Anything could have happened. And I feel, I mean, Alonso made it very clear in his post-race interview that he said he highly disagrees with the fact that points were given, because some teams did struggle in Saturday qualifying but worked a lot on their wet weather running on race pace. And Alonso was confident that he and Ocon could have gotten points if the race did indeed resume. And I mean, it wasn't just Alonso and Ocon, well, mainly Alonso, but Ocon also had a thing to say. It was, what's the other team that, oh yeah, Aston Martin. We know the boss at Aston Martin, what's his name? Otmar Schaffner. He kicked up a lot of dust, well, in Belgium's case, a lot of water, about the fact that the points shouldn't have been awarded for the higher teams, because the teams that didn't get points are massively disadvantaged, because I mean, like you said, every point matters. And like the teams that pushed for the points, like Red Bull, Mercedes, McLaren, Ferrari, they pushed for the points because they knew they needed it, but now they're gaining a big advantage, and the other teams that also know they need it are getting nothing. They didn't have the chance to actually try and achieve points. So I'm honestly on the teams outside of the top 10's side with this. I don't feel points should have been awarded. Even if they wanted to do something in the Netherlands, end of the race, at the end of the year, Abu Dhabi, once again a double points race, if the team's in the safety car when no one is allowed to overtake, I just feel personally that's a bit unfair towards the drivers that really thought they had a chance to get into the points on the Sunday.
Yeah, I agree with you, because everyone wanted their chance, and for all we know, Russell would have, after 3 laps or 4 laps, maybe fall out of P10, the top 10.
You never know.
Yeah, that's the bad thing. Sadly, we can't have the last say, and yeah, it's sad, but we have to make a choice. Are we gonna cry about it, or we'll, well, like the other I bet you that teams that they complained about it, but they knew if that's the final thing, let's just focus on the next race.
Yeah, obviously I get that, but this is a thing that's worth to be talked about. But obviously when the final verdict is said and when the stewards make up their mind, no team is gonna, even if you appeal it late after the race, you're not gonna change their minds necessarily. So I do understand why they did it, and they do have a good foot to stand on to say that the drivers that did qualify where they did deserved to start where they did. Just me personally, I don't agree with the choice. But there also has been reports saying that the FIA are working on a new system for if this does happen in the future again, because even the commentators, Martin Brundle, Crofty, all those guys, even they disagreed with the choice. So the FIA are working on a plan for if this ever happens again. But I mean, let's be honest. When was the last time you can remember a race was cancelled due to weather conditions?
No, I don't.
The last race I can remember that was cancelled due to weather conditions was Malaysia 2009. And they literally had like a small hurricane around the track. That's the last race I can remember that was cancelled. And before that, I have no knowledge about a race that was cancelled due to weather conditions. Wow. So this happens once in a blue moon, but there still needs to be a proper structure and proper rules for if this does happen again, and that people don't get disadvantaged.
Yeah, and I think why you can't remember from 2009 back, why the race wasn't suspended, because in the olden days I didn't think a lot of people and the drivers didn't care about the rain, they just want to drive. They
weren't so concerned about safety back in the day.
No, they didn't care. It's like, if I die, I die. I want my points.
No, that's very true. But also one thing that I do want to say well done to the stewards for cancelling the race. The one race that they used as a description for where a lot of drivers could have lost their lives was Belgium 1998. There was also the race started in the similar conditions to this, and literally through the first corner, I can never remember that first hairpin's corner, not the point, but heading down to Eau Rouge, literally on that piece of tarmac, even before they got to Eau Rouge, there was a monumental crash, and I think it took out something like 12 or 13 cars off the grid.
I remember that race. It's always when they talk about the track, they show that accidents.
And that is also, I think that was a big reason why they suspended the race, because after that, the FIA and Formula One themselves had a big fright, because there was a lot of drivers that was so close to having another car climb over their cars, and this was before the halo system, a car taking out your head, and I mean, in the wet weather, even tarmac is slippery, and with the conditions we saw, there was like literally small springs forming everywhere on the track. So I do understand why they suspended the race, and I do respect that. Just the point was a little bit of a gripe. But guys, that is all we're going to talk about for the Belgian Grand Prix, unless you want to add something on, Boosted.
No, I think unless we talk about the unsafe release of the Marshall's pit stop, because I think it was a little bit unsafe, but
that's an entire 2-hour podcast by itself. We'll talk about that one day. But guys, now heading in towards the Dutch Grand Prix. Now guys, one thing that I quickly want to mention before we go on, because I've seen you guys talk about it in the comments of previous podcasts before. Guys, one thing why I always release a podcast usually after the next race has already happened, my picture source, you guys obviously see with the podcast I throw in a lot of nice pictures. My source where I get my non-copyright pictures usually takes a week. So when we have these triple headers, I only get my pictures like literally after the next race. So don't worry, you guys will get all your podcasts. It's just going to be a bit later, but eventually we will work on that when the channel is a bit larger. Not the point. Heading into the Dutch Grand Prix. Okay, race results. So the race was won by Max Verstappen for Red Bull. He completed the race in 1 hour 30, and Max gained his full 25 points. Lewis Hamilton was in P2 for Mercedes, 20.9 seconds behind Max, but Lewis was so far behind because he did make a pit stop just before the end to get fastest lap, which he did literally on the final lap. So Lewis...
Because of Bottas.
Yeah. Because of Bottas. So Lewis got P2, 19 points. P3 was Valtteri Bottas, 56.4 seconds behind Max, gaining 15 points. Pierre Gasly is going to be a big talking point because he got P4 in the AlphaTauri. He was the second highest running Red Bull car ahead of Perez. So there's a lot that we can talk about in that sense. But Pierre Gasly P4 for AlphaTauri, 1 lap behind the top 3, 12 points for Gasly. Charles Leclerc was in P5 for Ferrari, gaining 10 points. Fernando Alonso in P6 for Alpine, 8 points. Carlos Sainz in P7 for Ferrari with 6 points. That battle between Sainz and Alonso was fantastic in the final few laps. Sergio Perez got P8 for Red Bull, he gains 4 points. Esteban Ocon in the second Alpine was 9th, gaining 2 points. And Lando Norris got P10 for McLaren, gaining 1 point. McLaren really didn't have a good weekend. PE was followed in P11 by his teammate Daniel Ricciardo. P12 was Lance Stroll for Aston Martin, followed by his teammate Sebastian Vettel. P14 was Antonio Giovinazzi for Alfa Romeo, followed by his teammate Robert Kubica. In P15, also for Alfa Romeo, Robert Kubica filling in for Kimi Raikkonen, who unfortunately got diagnosed with COVID-19, but he will be back for the Russian Grand Prix. So we're glad that Kimi has recovered. In P16 was Nicholas Latifi for Williams, ahead of his teammate George Russell, who retired about with 2 laps to go. Because he still had 2 laps to go, he still ended ahead of Mick Schumacher, who was 3 laps down in P18. Your second retiree with Russell was Yuki Tsunoda for AlphaTauri, and your final retirement was Nikita Mazepin for Haas. So that was the race. So, Boosted, will you please read us the Constructors' Championship after the Dutch Grand Prix?
Yes. Constructors' Championship of standings: P10 Haas with 0 points. I don't think they're gonna get any points. P9 Alfa Romeo with 3 points. 8th place with Williams with 20 points. 7th place Aston Martin with 53 points. 6th place AlphaTauri, oh my soul, 84 points. These A's. 5th place Alpine with 90 points. That's very close.
Yes.
4th place McLaren with 170 points. Ferrari in 3rd place, 181.5 points. Red Bull in 2nd place, closing the gap to Mercedes with 332.5 points. First place Mercedes 344.5 points.
Thank you, Boosted. So guys, that's the Constructors. The Drivers' Championship now stands. Max Verstappen leads the way on 224.5 points for Red Bull. Lewis Hamilton is in P2 on 221.5 points, so there's only 3 points difference between Max and Lewis after the Dutch Grand Prix. Bottas is in P3 with 123 points, ahead of Lando Norris in P4 on 114 points. Sergio Perez rounds out the top 5 on 108 points. He is followed by the 2 Ferraris of Charles Leclerc on 92 points and Carlos Sainz on 89.5 points in P7. P8 is Pierre Gasly on 66 points, with Daniel Ricciardo in P9 on 56 points. Fernando Alonso rounds out the top 10 on 46 points, followed by his teammate Esteban Ocon on 44 points. Sebastian Vettel is in P12 on 35 points. Yuki Tsunoda is in P13 on 18 points, actually tied with Lance Stroll in the second Aston Martin, also on 18 points. George Russell is in P15 on 13 points, followed by his teammate Nicholas Latifi in 16th on 7 points. Kimi Raikkonen is in 17th on 2 points, followed by his teammate Antonio Giovinazzi, who is sitting on 1 singular point. And rounding up the rest of the field is the 2 Haas drivers, Mick Schumacher and Nikita Mazepin, still sitting on 0 points. Now, talking points about the Dutch Grand Prix. Now, Boosted, I already mentioned it with us running through the results. Let's talk about Pierre frickin' Gasly. What a phenomenal qualifying and race result for that team. Because one thing before you say something that I want to mention, Aston Martin are starting to fall out of that P5 battle with AlphaTauri and Alpine. So you've got Mercedes and Red Bull fighting for P1 and P2, McLaren and Ferrari for P3 in the Constructors, and now you've got Alpine and AlphaTauri fighting for P5 in the Constructors. And this weekend for Gasly with the Dutch Grand Prix, Gasly made a big jump to catch up to Alpine, especially after Alpine's phenomenal performance in Hungary.
Yes, I think it was just so amazing. I believe, sadly, I think with it being the Dutch Grand Prix, hardly not a lot of people noticed it.
Yes.
Because of Max.
Yes, I mean, all you heard throughout the entire weekend was Max, Super Max. So it's really sad that it was unnoticed. But I mean, this is really a fantastic performance from Gasly. One step away from the podium.
Yeah, and that just shows me, I think he is really working so hard to prove Red Bull wrong.
Yes.
And I believe if Red Bull, I don't think for let's say next year or so, but I believe if Red Bull doesn't have such a tight grip on Gasly, and someone else offers Gasly a contract for potential World Championship, that will be the biggest mistake Red Bull will ever make.
Yes. One thing that I always say, the reason I don't support Red Bull as a team anymore, and I don't think I will ever support them again, was due to their, they call it heroics, but that's not heroics, the way they treated Danny Kvyat when he was partnering with Ricciardo after Vettel left Red Bull. The way they treated Kvyat was very unsportsmanlike in my opinion. And then when Verstappen partnered Ricciardo and Ricciardo left for Renault, what they did to Gasly, obviously, and it's not because I have a soft. Back then, I didn't have a soft spot for Gasly. I only gained a soft spot for Gasly after what Red Bull did to him, and now what they did exactly to Albon, what they did to Gasly. And yes, we had the fantastic news that Alexander Albon is coming back next year into Formula One, driving for Williams, partnering Nicholas Latifi. But unlike Gasly, and it's not because I doubt Albon's talent or anything, I don't think Albon is going to be able to pick himself up like Gasly did. I mean, look, Gasly was dropped halfway through the 2019 season after Hungary. In that same season, he lost his best friend Antoine Hubert. He had to deal with the fact that Red Bull told him he's not good enough to drive their car, and yet still, with 2 races to go in Brazil, he gets a podium, out driving Lewis Hamilton in a Mercedes. And come 2020, the Grand Prix we just had this past weekend, Gasly wins the Italian Grand Prix. And yes, there's a lot of factors, but look at all the other results. Gasly is mixing with the McLaren and the Ferraris. If you look at Yuki Tsunoda, I feel that is the AlphaTauri's true pace. But Gasly is doing exactly what Verstappen has been doing with the Red Bull in past seasons before it was a front-running car. He's exceeding the limits of that AlphaTauri, and he's gaining points almost every single race. AlphaTauri is the only team to have scored in every single race this season so far, thanks to Pierre Gasly.
Yeah, and it just shows he has amazing talents, but for me, I would say it sounds a bit mean, but it's good that he is an AlphaTauri.
Yes, it is definitely.
It's very good because they give him space to grow, and that's why he is performing how he is.
Yes.
Because he does what he wants. He sets up the car how he likes it.
And he's the team leader.
And I can guarantee you, when he was at Red Bull, they tried to copy and paste Max's setup, drive the car.
Interviews that weren't really released, you really had to go search for these interviews, but when he was at Red Bull, at certain circuits, struggled with that car, especially the rear end. It had a really loose rear end. And to take Gasly, he was coming out of his rookie season at Toro Rosso, which now is AlphaTauri. That was the previous name for those of the new F1 fans watching. He ended his rookie season alongside, of all people, Albon, beating Albon, having a good season, and Red Bull were just like, okay, you're on the next seat, show us what you got. And when he didn't perform, they shoved him. And the only thing is, the reason I don't support Red Bull as a team anymore, while I would prefer Mercedes to win the Constructors' Championship, is they are ruining these young drivers' careers. I mean, look at Danny Kvyat. Where's Danny Kvyat? After he got dropped by Red Bull, he was out for about, I think, a season, came back, drove for Toro Rosso for 2 seasons, drove for them with AlphaTauri last year, and there's no rumours that Kvyat's going to make a comeback to Formula 1. And we all know how talented Danny Kvyat is. Danny Kvyat is a proven podium sitter, and he almost won a race when he was back at Red Bull. The reason Red Bull sacked him is because he made too many mistakes, which I can understand. He crashed a lot, but they didn't give him time to acclimatize to the team and the car. They gave him 1 season and he was out. So that's just my thing. I respect Red Bull as a team, and I understand they want to be the team that fights at the front after their time with Vettel in the V8 era, but to have a junior Red Bull program and to just, I almost want to say use your drivers like that, it doesn't sit well with me. And to come back to the Gasly topic, Gasly is redeeming himself so well, and Boosted, like you've heard me say it before, get out of the Red Bull program. When his contract is done next season at AlphaTauri, he needs to go into a team like McLaren, Alpine, Ferrari, even if the chance is there. We don't know what's going to happen with Sainz and Leclerc these next few years. But Gasly, I've said it before and I'll say it again, if Gasly has the right team behind him, and he keeps performing like he's doing now, he is going to be a world champion in the future if he can get the team and the car behind him.
Yeah, and maybe Gasly goes to Alfa Romeo.
Well, you never know. With all like we said before, guys, we don't know what car is going to be the fastest next year. For all we know, Valtteri Bottas is going to Alfa Romeo. He doesn't know that they've been building this car for 10 years now. And next year, Alfa Romeo show up and Valtteri Bottas is your world champion at the end of the year. We don't know. That is how confusing these regulations are for next season, because nobody has a cooking clue. Not even the F1 teams themselves have a cooking clue who's going to be the quickest next year.
Yeah, and that just excites me because for the past few years we knew it's Mercedes, then Red Bull or Ferrari or whatever. So this mixes up, but we're going so far off topic.
Yes, let's actually go on because we've still got another podcast to do after this.
I would pick it up with Kubica doing a fantastic job in finishing P14 just behind Giovinazzi for doing half a weekend.
Yes.
He was
He only made practice 3. Kimi was still in practice 1 and practice 2.
Yeah, practice 3, so 1 hour practice, one quali session and a race. And that just shows me with Kubica having so much experience, he doesn't, he started bad, but he fought back. And that just shows the experience he has. Yes.
First of all, just from the Motorsport Lounge side, guys, we send our best regards to Kimi Räikkönen and his family. Like I said, Kimi was tested positive for COVID-19, and Kimi has been very sick. But Kimi, according to Alfa Romeo reports, Kimi has almost made a full recovery, and like we said, we will see him in Russia in 2 weeks. So just from the Motorsport Lounge team, best wishes for Kimi Räikkönen. He is, and I mean, in his final season in Formula 1, it is a little bit sad to not have him race for 2 weekends, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. Back to you, Boosted. Yes, when it comes to Robert Kubica, look, Robert Kubica has been my father's favorite. Ever since Kubica drove for BMW Sauber back in, I think his debut season was 2006 or 2005 or 2006, I can't remember. It's a little bit before my time. I was still a little snot rocket at that time. But Robert Kubica is, I watched a video recently on another channel that does F1 content, and it was the 10 most talented drivers who didn't win a world championship, and number 1 on that list was Robert Kubica. He never had a team that was quick enough to battle Ferrari or Red Bull, all these big teams. He always got sacked to the midfield. And I mean, Robert Kubica, he is an absolutely phenomenal driver. And yes, obviously he lost a bit of his spunk after his rally crash when he retired from Formula 1 with that very bad rally crash. But still, like you said, you can see the experience of Robert Kubica finishing P14 in the Alfa Romeo just behind Giovinazzi, who, by the way, qualified in Q3 at the Dutch GP, finishing 1 position behind Giovinazzi. And unfortunately, I can't see the amount of time he was behind Gio because they were both lapped twice. But as far as my knowledge goes, I can't remember that he was very far away from Gio.
Yeah, it was, let's say, a great qualifying for Giovinazzi, and a great race for Kubica.
Yes, actually, moving into our next topic, I said here, Giovinazzi, brilliant qualifying, but bad race pace. To me, it feels like they gave Kubica the race pace and they said, okay, Gio, do what you can in quali. And they, in any case, ended outside the points just close to each other. I know that's a stupid joke to make, but that's how it feels, because Giovinazzi qualified P8, I think.
Yeah, P8 or 9.
Yeah. He out-qualified freaking Lando Norris, who fell out in Q2. I mean, that's fantastic from Gio. But come the race, Gio had no race pace. And Kubica, on the other hand, had a very good race pace. I think, like you said, that is a bit of the experience talking, but it was just disappointing because Giovinazzi is fighting for his seat in Formula 1, and with young drivers like Theo Pourchaire, Guan Yu Zhou and Oscar Piastri, 3 big names in Formula 2, making their way up the ranks, I don't see, if Gio doesn't make some sort of heroic freaking P4 finish, I don't see how Alfa Romeo are going to keep him. And for me personally, that's a very sad thing, because I personally love Giovinazzi. I've always said Pierre Gasly and Giovinazzi are the 2 most underrated drivers on that grid. And Giovinazzi has just never had the car underneath him to show what his talents really are. He's going up against the most experienced Formula 1 driver in history, Kimi Räikkönen. And he's learned a lot from Kimi, that's clear.
And time and again, he beats Kimi Räikkönen in a race.
Yes, but he beats Kimi mostly in qualifying. Kimi usually has the overall race pace on Gio. But still, like I said, he's learned a lot from Räikkönen. It's just sad to me that Gio is most probably going to lose his seat, and he has never had the proper chance to show what he's got.
Yeah, and that's just, for me, is the sad truth about this high sport.
No.
Because it's so emotionless, and it's just everyone wants to do their best, and every team wants to do their best, but they have to be so emotionless and just pick the best drivers that is available.
Yes. Look, Arava always says that. He always says F1 is a ruthless sport, and it unfortunately is. I mean, you've only got 20 spots, and those are the 20 best drivers in the world. You have to prove yourself to stay there. You have to prove yourself to get in, and then when you're there, you've got about 2 seasons to prove yourself. AlphaTauri have retained Yuki Tsunoda. Now, I didn't think they were going to, because Yuki hasn't been performing. But basically, Franz Tost, the boss of AlphaTauri, said, you've got 1 season. It's 2022 with the new regs. If you don't prove yourself, you're out. And that
maybe just give him a booster seat.
And that's a good example about how ruthless this sport is. And obviously I understand it. With the amount of money that Formula 1 deals with, I can understand why it's so ruthless. But from a fan's perspective, somebody who really likes Giovinazzi, for me it's just sad. Because if you look back at Gio's GP2 career, and even his series that he raced before that, Gio was a dominant driver. Gio was, I nearly swore now, he was a bloody fast driver. And it's just like, Gio, come on! But he doesn't have the car underneath him to do it.
Yeah, the Alfa Romeo has, since the Ferrari engine penalties, I think it was worse off for Alfa Romeo than it was for Ferrari.
It was worse for Alfa Romeo and for Haas. That's a fact. Because Ferrari have got the budget to still, even with a bad engine, build a good car. And Alfa Romeo and Haas, with their small budgets, especially a team like Haas, they don't have the budgets to build these insane chassis and aero and all this stuff. They need to sit with that crappy engine, and now they've got a crappy car as well. So that's a fact. That when Ferrari got caught out with their whole illegal engine modifications, it affected Alfa Romeo and Haas more. And that's just, Giovinazzi was with this. It's like the whole Alonso with the different teams he's driven for. Wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah, and I think it's just the experience Ferrari have, because they are the team that's been in Formula 1 since the start.
Yes.
And when I think they eventually put their 4 brain cells together, they are smart enough to figure out what's wrong with the car and just fix what's needed, and that's why this year the pace is way better than last year.
Very true, very true. But we'll get to Ferrari in a minute. But basically, just it's sad for Gio. I really hope he doesn't lose his seat, but the possibilities, unfortunately, are very big. Heading into the next topic.
Second unfortunate thing.
Yes. So let's talk about Sebastian Vettel. Now, I'm going to run through this topic quick, but you know Vettel had a mid-race spin at that very banked T4.
Yeah. The outboard shot where in 2019 they raced at Australia. we're in the couple last corners. How fast these cars are going actually.
Yes, you look at the onboard and it looks freaking slow, but then you look at the offboard and you realize, holy crap, they're going through that section of corners at what, 240, 250 kilometers an hour.
And yeah, I know it's a simple mistake, but yeah, I think Vettel has I think he would have forgot about it and said,
yes. He would have moved
okay,
on about it from now.
move on. Just a very unfortunate mistake. One too aggressive pedal, or maybe the brake bias was incorrect.
Too much to the rear,
and it did a Tokyo drift. Maybe just when he spins, he should with the banking just should have smashed the throttle and maybe drift through the corner.
Well, I mean, if you look at Sainz's crash in practice, Vettel had the same spin, but he kept it out of the wall. So once again, experience for Sebastian Vettel. Well done to Sebastian for actually keeping that car out of the wall. But moving into the next topic, very good weekend from Alpine. Ocon finishing in P10 and Alonso finishing in P6. And like I mentioned when I ran through the results, that battle between Alonso and Sainz in the final 10 laps was absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, that for me, while I was noticing like Max just running away,
yes,
it was like, okay, Max is gonna win unless he meets a wall.
Yeah, unless he bends it.
Unless the fans blinding with their smoke screen.
Or unless there's a Baku version 2.0.
Yeah, but either way, he won, and that just draw my attention with the other battles. It was so exciting for me. Yes, it was not for the lead or something, but it was just exciting for me because it's watching Alonso, the two Spanish drivers, Spaniards battle with a red and blue.
Red and blue.
So well, yeah, Alonso.
Yes, Alonso came out on top. I think he got Sainz at the start of the final lap, heading into the first corner. Look, Zandvoort is a tough track to overtake. It's a lot like Hungary, very tough to overtake. But the talent of Sainz and the experience of Alonso, it's the same like the battle between Alonso and Russell back at Austria. That final few laps, Alonso's experience shows what a good driver he is, and Sainz just giving Alonso an absolute hell of a time shows the talent that Carlos Sainz has. And watching those two, basically Alonso, when he eventually leaves, and I don't think it's going to be more than 2, max 3 years still in Formula 1, but when Alonso eventually decides to leave, basically that title of the Spaniard in Formula 1 is going to go to Carlos. And these battles, even though Carlos is losing them at this stage, every time he battles somebody like Alonso or Perez or Hamilton, he gains experience. He gains tips of what to do next time. And this is good for Sainz. And obviously, I'm a Ferrari fan. I wanted Sainz to end ahead of Alonso, even though Alonso is my hero. I wanted a Ferrari to do good because of their battle with McLaren, but still, it was not like, come on, Alonso's passed. And I was like, well, freaking done. That was some smooth racing. And like you said, we always say, when the front's boring, the midfield provides. And once again, the midfield provided with the Dutch Grand Prix.
Yeah, and with those battles, sometimes I just wish, once again, Hamilton and Verstappen in the Italian race crashing and everything, just shows me they need to look how especially Alonso races, because his awareness is so good. He's not gonna push the car and know, okay, if I stay there, I'm gonna crash. He's rather back off, because you can clearly see the other drivers not gonna back off.
Yes.
Because if both drivers not gonna back off,
you're
get
gonna crap like Silverstone and Monza.
You're gonna crash, and that's just that will just bring up more aggression. Just one driver needs to just back off. How many laps did Alonso and Sainz race?
They battled for about the final 12 laps of the race. More. No. Alonso caught Sainz, I think, with about 18 or 19 laps to go, because really quickly catching Sainz, and that was about. So it was almost a 20-lap battle.
And yeah, and that made it more exciting than one lap battle.
Yes.
Because that's consistently battle after battle, try and try and try. That made it more exciting. At the end of that, the final lap when Alonso finally passed him, even if you were a Sainz fan, you were like, okay, damn, okay. That
Sainz
was
defended for, let's take a round number. Sainz defended for 15 laps from the second most experienced driver on that grid, and everybody knows the image that Fernando Alonso has, and everybody knows how good he is. Sainz defended freaking fantastically. If you were a Sainz fan, it wasn't like, oh damn it, it was just like, well, it had to happen. Well done, Sainz. Well done, Alonso.
and I promise you, even with them saying, oh, okay, Alonso passed, is like Sainz put up a fight.
Yes.
He made him work for it. It was not a quick go around.
Yeah, go around the outside,
Yeah.
massive DRS straight, just bye-bye. It was a good battle. And Boosted, two things I want to mention there before we move on to the next topic. One thing I want to mention about Alonso this season, every time he battles with a young driver, Russell, he's even done stuff with Latifi and Mazepin, with Schumacher, now with Sainz. Every time he has a battle like that for points, or not even sometimes for points, just having a good battle with a driver, as soon as those cars park up after the parade, no, not the parade lap, after the final lap after they cross the line, the in lap. Every time, as soon as that in lap is done, Alonso gets out of his car. He doesn't even put the steering wheel properly in. The first thing he does, he walks over to the driver and he congratulates him on a good battle. Even if Alonso won the battle, he's still like, well done. And I mean, Alonso has made effort to really spend time with the younger drivers, even his teammate Ocon. Alonso is there to pass on his knowledge, because Alonso knows he doesn't have 2 decades of Formula 1 racing left in him. He knows if it really goes far, it's going to go 4 years, and that's like really stretching it. I think Alonso's going to be an F1 Max 2 years after this year. I think Max to the end of 2023, and then I'm probably going to cry my eyes out again, but we'll worry about that when we get there. Alonso is really spending time with the young drivers, as well as Sebastian Vettel, and I love to see it. They are there to get these young talents to pass on their knowledge so that Formula 1 can stay this incredible sport that it is. That's one thing that I love. And one thing that I also quickly want to mention about Alonso, when you mentioned the battling between like Lewis and Max crashing the whole time, and some of the other drivers on the grid as well, every time Alonso has been in a battle, Alonso hasn't crashed with someone once this year before. Yes, there has been times when he has made a little bit of contact, but he's never spun someone, he's never sent someone into the barrier, he's never sent himself into the barrier. And I mean, just look at a few battles that pops into my head. Him, Sainz and Vettel at the opening round of the season in Bahrain. They went 3 wide into turn 1. Nobody came out of that in any bad fashion. Alonso and Russell, final laps at Austria. How phenomenal was that? One of the guilty parties of crashing this year, Hamilton and Alonso, Hungary. Yes, they made contact, but it was a tap. Lewis didn't go creaming into the barrier. Alonso made that car as wide as Jupiter, just making sure Hamilton earned that pass. And now with Sainz, they didn't even make contact once. And when you look at these battles with Max and Lewis, and even sometimes some of Perez's battles that are a little bit sloppy recently, take some inspiration from Fernando. I know Hamilton and Fernando can't stand each other. Hamilton and Fernando Alonso can't be in the same room. I know that. But freaking hell, learn a bit. Alonso's in a car that it doesn't handle as good as the Mercedes or the Red Bull. And he's managing these insane moves and these extremely great battles by just keeping it clean. Yes, rubbing is racing, but it should never get unfair. And that's one thing that Fernando Alonso is phenomenal with, even when he was his egotistical self freaking 6-7 years ago. You never saw a battle with Fernando Alonso where he sent someone off track or where he was the one sent off track. It was always clean, proper racing. So that's just what I want to mention. And Booster, just so you can quickly add on the whole thing where I talked about Alonso and Vettel passing on their knowledge. What is your opinion about that? I personally think it's fantastic.
Yeah, I think that also it's amazing. I know Vettel has a very special place for Mick Schumacher.
Obviously, because his mentor was Michael,
Yeah.
Mick's dad.
And Alonso especially Alonso and Vettel, they are not in the quickest cars, and I think it's good because that shows you how good they are, because with their great performance, it's them, not so much as the car. Yes, some tracks the cars is suited.
Yes.
And it's very important, because if you don't teach let's take example, Max was taught be ruthless.
Yes.
Because he had to fight his way. He had to fight against Rosberg, Hamilton, because none of them gave him a single opportunity or not enough space.
Yes.
And that's why Max is so ruthless what he's now, because he is, I'm not gonna back down to you, and you never showed me the needed respect, and I will show you the same.
And I mean, not just with the other drivers, I mean, look at Max's dad. That's how Jos Verstappen raised Max. He's ruthless. Go for, even if the gap's not there, go for it. And I'm not judging, before anybody types it in the comments, I'm not judging Jos Verstappen. Every parent has their own way of raising their kid, and when you want to get into a sport like Formula 1, yes, there has to be a certain amount of ruthlessness. But Max and Hamilton especially now, they are beginning to go over that edge. And when we get to the Italian Grand Prix podcast, we're going to talk a lot about that, because that is a big elephant in the room. But when you look at these battles with Alonso and even with Vettel's battles aren't sloppy. Vettel's battles, he tries to keep it as clean as possible. When it gets sloppy, it's due to the other driver.
Yeah.
And with them passing on their knowledge, I mean, I know Alonso is spending a lot of time with Esteban Ocon and George Russell. Vettel is spending a lot of time with Nikita Mazepin and Mick Schumacher. And they are actually being like, guys, this is how you do it. This is where you're going to gain your experience. Just because you're in an absolute crap box doesn't mean you can't perform. And that is just something that I love. And I never thought, being a Fernando Alonso fan for how long I've been, I've never thought that Fernando would do something like this. And for me, it's such a good feeling to see him doing this. So I just love every second.
I think we should